Hey, this is Nate from DataFirstInsights.io, and today I'll be talking about the 5 most common SQL functions that I use on a day-to-day basis. There's a lot of SQL tutorials out there that kind of walk through different methodologies and functions and so on and so forth, but these are the 5 SQL functions that I actually use all the time in real analytics work. If you're an analyst, analytics engineer, or just trying to get better at SQL, these 5 functions I'd honestly get more comfortable with pretty early on because they show up constantly in real work. So today I'm going to show you what each one does, where I use it, and why it matters in analytics. So to get started, the first one is going to be around date trunk. So you might have seen this around in tutorials, but so we can have instances like in this data over here where you're working not just with like dates, but also like timestamps. And fundamentally, these are 2 separate data types. They're pretty similar, but as you can imagine, the date data type will only contain the actual date. Meanwhile, timestamps will include the time. In a lot of analysis, except on like, if you're doing some kind of hourly or something like that, they're really going to only consider like realistically on like the day granularity and also like month, quarter, and stuff like that. A lot of the times working with data, right, it's not going to be just by default the date. A lot of the times it's actually going to have the specific timestamp that you're going to be working with. So in order to kind of get to that level of granularity, whether if you want it on like a day level granularity, a week level granularity, a month level granularity, this is how you kind of get to that level of information. So you can see that I have this like fake data set from BigQuery. It has like these like made up like orders over here. And you can see that there's this created at timestamp, right? So when the order was created at. So what we effectively want to do is change this into something maybe on a month level granularity. So I'll show you like the day and then month and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and get started. I am going to say date trunk. So depending on the data platform that you have, like a lot of the functions are going to be pretty similar across the board, but there might be some like slight nuances between the two. So in this case, BigQuery wants you to specify created at the field that you'll be referencing. So created at, and then the what you want to truncate. Okay. What this contains here is the date trunk function. And then there's 2 arguments that we got to like fill in. The first argument is going to be the field that you want to truncate. So this is that created at timestamp, as you can see over here. And the other part is going to be the specific day. Go ahead and get rid of this. So this is where we can specify like we want to truncate the date by day, week, month, so on and so forth. So this is where you kind of specify that. And let's go ahead and give it an alias. So the alias will be created at day, say dates. And then let's go ahead and give this a run real quick. Let's include everything else as well. Cool. All right, so you can see that it truncated the date to the actual day, right? So 2025-10-01, 2025-10-01, and then, we just don't have that the specific time. Now, if you actually want to get to the date, we're going to have to kind of update the data type. All right, so what we're going to do is just cast it as a date. So cast as dates. Should be good to go. Sweet. And this is what we get. So this totally just removes any kind of like timestamp and then just creates it as a date. All right. So this is great for like the day, but what if we wanted to like, get like the monthly count of orders. So in this case, what we would do is we'd actually swap this over to month. And then what we can do is just do the count distinct of order ID to get orders. And then we can go ahead and group by created at date. Cool. Sweet. So this is kind of how you get to the monthly. And then I'd probably just recommend just ordering by created at date. Just want to see the most recent. Cool. There we go. And that's how we get the monthly order count, by using the created at timestamp field. All right, so that's the first function, and it's honestly very useful. I use it all the time. All right, let's talk about the second one, coalesce. Cool. All right, so coalesce. Say for instance, understand like, hey, when orders were either shipped or when they were created. But as you can see, not every order has like a delivered or shipped at timestamp, because some of them get canceled, right? So what we want to do is, hey, pretty much like if this field isn't null, then we want to populate it with the values in here. But if it is null, then I want to populate created at timestamp here. So how we get around that is to use a function called coalesce. So in a similar manner, let's go ahead and just use coalesce. So coalesce. And what we're going to do is that first column that we want to get the values for first. So that's shipped at timestamp. And then we want to pretty much coalesce the other field into the same field. So created at timestamp. And I'm going to give it an alias shipped or created. So cool. And this is super important because like oftentimes like we'll have these like fields that kind of a similar manner. They get populated, like the field that you want might not get populated, and you want to combine it with another field. So we would do this for when values are null, but you actually kind of want it to be 0. So oftentimes there'll be fields that you want to aggregate, but they'll contain like a numeric value, but also will contain nulls, and we would want to coalesce that with like a 0. And I can give you another example of this, but like see number of items in this field, they don't contain any null values, but if they did, right, what we'd want to do is essentially say coalesce number of items, and then 0, right? And this would force like, hey, if there's a null record, say this was a null record instead of 1, then if it was null, then it would pretty much coalesce the value and add the value 0 instead of that null value. So for this example, let's go ahead and install, and then I'll just go ahead and show like both scenarios. So in this case, if we were to run it right now, you'll see that, okay, shipped or created at timestamp, this matches the created at timestamp over here, right? Because this field right here is null. But if it wasn't, so we can do like a quick validation on this. right? So it's using so you can see like there's a shipped at timestamp and there's the actual value in here. So March 18th, you can see it was created on the 17th. But what will populate in the field would be the shipped at timestamp 318 over here. Cool. So that's an example of coalesce. The third one is like, honestly, I use this all the time. It's not exaggeration here. Is the row number window function. So I know window functions are a bit more advanced. Once you get a hang of them, they are very, very useful, but window functions are pretty much a game changer. Especially this one right here, row number. So for example, this table contains all records for orders, but what if I just wanted to get the first record of an order for a user? Right? So like a user can have multiple orders, say like I shopped at like a grocery store, Publix, Safeway, whatever you want to call it. You go to the grocery store and you'll have multiple orders kind of in your lifetime shopping at the grocery store. So maybe it's 100. Let's just say, for example, it's 3, which is, not quite much. But what if I wanted to get essentially the record of my first order shopping at like Safeway or Publix? So we can use this row number to essentially get like the first order. Now you can say like, hey, Nate, there's actually you can just use like a min-max function to get the date. Sure, that's totally the case. But what if I wanted to grab all the other information instead of just like the min dates, essentially, to get the first order? And you would do this essentially by using the row number window function. All right, cool. So I'll show you kind of two ways. They're the same thing. It's just one just essentially doesn't require like an additional subquery or CTE. So I'll show you the qualify clause, and I'll show you the other methodology if that's not available for whatever data platform that you're using. So I'm going to select the same table that we were using. So before we use qualify, let's go ahead and just like validate the logic. So you're going to specify like, hey, row number over partition by. So partition by is like, think of it as like grouping. So in this case, right, I'm the user. I go grocery shopping and I want to see my first order because I have multiple orders over my lifetime shopping at the store. In this case, I only want to grab the first order respective of the user, including myself. So in this case, we will partition by, stratify by whatever you want to call it, by the user ID, and we'll order by when the order was created. Okay, so I have it like subsectioned out by users. That's great. That's the first step. But how do I kind of assign the row number kind of correspondingly? Do I do it by like the most recent order kind of going back, or do I want to go and look at it from the perspective of like the first order kind of looking forward? In this case, since I want to get the first order being like the number one rank, or not essentially a rank, but essentially the row number in the row order, then I would use this created at timestamp. If I wanted to do the opposite, if I want to grab the most recent order, then I'll specify descending. But by default, right, order by is going to be by ascending, so we don't need to necessarily add that in there. You can if you really want to, but that's the default. I'm going to give it an alias as cool, and then let's go ahead and order by user ID, and then create it at TS. It's going to query everything. It's not a very big table, so shouldn't be much of an issue. All right, cool. So let's just try to find an example of a user that has had multiple orders. Okay, there you go. Let's see here. So we got user ID 10. And then you can see that, okay, their first order, right? We can look at it created at timestamps. So the first order was in February, second order was in March, and then the third order was the end of March for this user, right? You can see the ranking that we have over here, right? So this is the ranking that we created, 1, 2, 3. This is the order of which we want to obtain. You can see that, with our logic and what we want to do, we actually just want to grab where the first order by user is just equal to 1, because that'll be representative of like the first order for each user, right here, right here, right here, so on and so forth. So in order to do that, what we want to do, and go ahead and comment this out, is that we want to qualify. So qualify. So in a typical where clause, you can't really add window functions, but qualify lets you do that. So it's kind of like similar to a where clause in this instance, right? So now I can be like, hey, where this window function equals 1. So in this case, right, it'll be representative of all like the first instances of that order for the user. Let's go ahead and run that real quick. Cool. Now we should only have, right, just 1. But let's go ahead and just double check with the users that technically have multiple orders, just to do some double checking here. Cool. So, right, like user ID 10, there's like 573. Right now, all of these just have for a user in particular, we're grabbing like the first instance of an order right over here. And as you can probably tell, like, there's other ways of getting around this, like getting like the min date, but then you have to kind of like rejoin back on the table to filter out those values. And this is kind of how you do it over here. Now, what if like the data platform that you have doesn't really have qualify as an option? So what you can do, it just requires an additional step, but you can create either a CT or a subquery, which is like with, just say base over here, right over here. And then you do something similar. So select. And then now you can use the where clause now, because the row number is now applied. It's no longer technically a window function in this case. So we could say where first order by year equals 1. Oh, sorry. First order by user equals 1. View the results, right? You get the same result. Cool. So this is really important because, oftentimes when we're creating like data models or really depend on like the just a single like granularity, whether it's user order or whatever kind of granularity that you are coming up with. This is really useful as a way to just make sure that you kind of ensure that level of granularity. So in this case, right, if I wanted just like a users table that has like some order level information, and I just want it based off of the initial order, this would be a really good use case to use this like qualify, or essentially just this logic in general, and then filtering by first order by user equals 1. Cool. So that is row number. The fourth one is lag. So lag is really nice, and this is also a window function. So for example, you have these like metrics that you want to create, and however, the metric that you want to create perhaps is maybe around the lines of like month over month calculations, right? So like you can think of a report where it's just like, hey, how does this month look relative to the prior period, prior month, prior quarter, so on and so forth. So lag operation in this case would be useful because we can essentially get onto the same row or the prior row and be like, hey, I want to compare these two values such to get to the same row, and then now you can make the comparison. So this is how we do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just do some like counting of metrics. So like that date trunk, right? Let's go ahead and just use the same logic here. And I'm just going to add this into a CTE. Delete this. I'm going to rename this to month. Let's go ahead and give this a try. Cool. So 8, 13, 24 for the first 3 months. Looks good. All right, let's go ahead and try lagging this. So lag. In this case, this one's going to be a little bit different because we got to specify the field that we want to lag. So in this case, we want to lag orders. And then we could say over partition by. Or actually, what we just do is over by. All right, let's do a quick test. Cool. So as you can see, it's lagging over, and then we don't need to partition by anything in this case for this function because, right, we're just kind of taking like, we're not like creating like subgroups here. And then in this case as well, right, we're having to specify the order though, because like it's not going to know like in which way to order or which way to lag, right? So lag by descending or lag by ascending, and also doesn't know the field per se either. Like it's really easy to tell in this instance, but you know, what if you have multiple fields? So we want to specify how do we order the lag. So you can see that, all right, 13.8. So if we were to want to do some calculations, right, then now all we have to do is just compare these two fields. If you want to, there's a same function that does pretty much a similar thing. It's just the opposite direction. So lead orders. And if you want to get the same result, that you can like the setting. So it really is choose your own destiny at this point. Right, you'll get the same answer here, right? Cool. But I will just use lag. All right, cool. Now we can do some rough calculations. I always kind of get these mixed up, but let's do orders divided by prior orders as so MOM, not mom, month over month order count. Prior orders, okay. All right. Some data platforms lets you get away with like the alias and then reusing it. BigQuery it does not. So we're gonna have to add this logic over here, and then we should be good to go. Cool. Sweet. So here is the month over month order counts, which actually should be technically a percentage. So what we can do is just round this. I'm just going to leave it in decimal format as well. Just name that percent. Cool. And now it's a little bit cleaner, right? It's not just a float. It's just rounded to the nearest like 2 decimal points. Cool. All right. So that is an example of a lag. And then let's last example, which is sum over, which is a window function. All right. So in the same vein, right? If you want to do some kind of like calculations, but instead of just like getting the count by month, what if I just want to get like the cumulative counts? So for example, 8 plus 13, 21, 45 for March, and so on and so forth, right? So to get like a cumulative rolling count, we will do that, or we'll use that sum over window function. Cool. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. And then let's go ahead and get started. So sum. So we have to sum, we have to specify what we're going to sum orders over partition by. Actually, no partition by in this case. We're just going to do something similar, order by. Create it at month as cumulative orders. Let's go ahead and view. Oh, a little bit too quick. All right. Right. So now you can see the cumulative order count. So 8, these are going to be the same, but you can start to see like, oh, okay, so 8 plus 13, 21, 21 plus 24, 45, and we just get the cumulative count over time. Right. And this is pretty nice because, again, it's kind of a different way of just like, instead of just looking at counts by within the month period or whatever period you're looking at, you can see kind of like the progress, kind of leading up to a certain period. Cool. So these 3 in particular, like I'll use them multiple times in a day. So date, trunk, coalesce, and the row number, especially this qualify over here. These ones I do use pretty frequently, but not nearly as much as the first 3. So, if you were to kind of like study and just get some practice in, definitely these 3 for sure. And luckily enough, like date, trunk, and coalesce, pretty straightforward. Row number, I always just recommend, like, if you're going to use like something like this, qualify, first testing out with the actual logic within, whatever like CT or subquery or just like query that you're developing. And then if it looks good, it kind of checks the boxes, then you can probably just go ahead and just move the logic down here. And you just comment or remove this, and then you should be good to go. The lead lag operators, kind of same thing, right? With window functions in general, what I end up doing is just adding the logic in, kind of the window functions in, and then just kind of checking and making sure that it's kind of doing what I expect. If you liked the video, I definitely would appreciate if you liked and subscribed. In the meantime, take it easy, and I appreciate the time.